All right, one point of clarification on our last video. If we're doing the one node, because we're passing in the index, we want to check for that index. So let me just erase all this real quick, and I'll just clarify that real quick, and then we'll go on. So if I have just one node, we're going to check if first is equal to last, then we go ahead and just delete that one node. But we also want to check, and we want to make sure that index is equal to 0. We want to do that because let's say I only have one node, but somebody passes in an index 100. I can't delete index 100 because I only have index 0. So we want to, that's an error case. We want to check for that error. And we just don't do anything. If we are asked to remove 100 and we're at only 0, we just don't do anything. We just go ahead and let it run on through the program and we'll be fine. All right, so what we're doing now, let's go ahead and remove these and get this set up. What we're doing now is removing the last one and our general case. So let's say I've got a bunch of these. Let me bring this up. Got a lot of kids out in the hallway. That wasn't very good. All right, last is pointing here, first is pointing here. And this is a null pointer, this is a null pointer. And we're pointing back and forth. Okay, and let's say that I've got, of course, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So my node here, my last node is my fourth node. So first thing I want to do is I want to create a shared pointer, give it a name. I'm going to give mine a name of temp. And I'm going to put that in, and then I'm going to create that. Then I'm going to create a for loop that's going to run for I is less than index. So I'm passing in an index. Let's say I'm going to pass in an index of 5 here, because I want to show you one thing we need to watch out for. So my index is 5. Okay. So I go ahead and start iterating down the list. So temp points here, and then it points here. So now that's 0, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's nothing to delete there. So I want to check for that. And the way I do that is inside my loop, I have two things. Number one, I'm going to check for this last. What I want to happen is I want my temporary to end up on the one I'm deleting. Okay. So every time I loop through, I'm going to have my for loop. Then I'm going to have an if statement that says if not temp next. So if this doesn't exist, then I'm going to go ahead and return. If it does exist, I'm going to keep bouncing down until I get to the correct one. And then after I check for this, then I do my temp equals temp next. And let's just look at and see how that'll work and if that'll really kind of do what we're wanting here. So I start off with, I create my temp and I point it here. I'm going to do a different color. I put my temp here and I set it equal to first. Okay, that's the first thing I do. Got my pointer there, it's pointing to first. Then I create a loop that starts at 0. all right, and iterates until I is less than, that's I is less than index. And let's go ahead and give index a number, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's give index a number of 5. So this is 5. All right, so we start off, we say we're in our loop. We start our loop. First thing we look at is if not temp next. Does temp next exist? Yes, it does. All right, then we say temp is equal to temp next, which is right here. So now we go ahead and we move temp to right here. Okay. Then we go back up to the loop. We run the loop again. The loop I is now equal to 1. This is I is equal to 1. This is I is equal to 0. And we step in and say, hey, does next exist? Yes, it does. So we say temp is equal to temp next. Boom, right here. And now that is where temp is. And we continue this on. Okay, so we do it for I is equal to 2. Whoops. I is equal to 2. I is equal to 3. And so here we are. We step into it. We go, I is now equal to, temp is pointing here. And we are on our 4th iteration. I is equal to 4. Okay. Well, we step in and say, we've got the if statement that says if temp next does not exist, it does not exist. Right here, it does not exist. So we just print out an error. We print an error and we return. All right. Cool. So that should work. I'm going to go ahead and leave these iterations down here so we can see those. This time we're going to start again. We're going to say that this is 4. Okay. So we start off, we set temp equal to first. That's our first iteration. At the end of our first iteration, we point to next. So now temp is here. Started here. Temp is now here on iteration number 1, or when I is equal to number 1. We go through. This is good. So we go ahead and step up to the next one. So now temp is equal to this node, and I is equal to 2. I is still less than 4. So we're going to step up here. And at the end of this, so we iterate through, we check here. This is good, so we go ahead and move temp here. Now, because the if not temp next, so if this does not exist, is inside the for loop, we don't actually run the for loop here, because I is equal to 4, and we want I is less than 4. I is less than index, which in this case is 4. So we don't run the loop again, so we don't move that forward. So our temp ends up right here, which is exactly what we want. Now, if this is the case, I'm going to go ahead and remove some of this. Remove that 4. What we need to do to make it so that this is deleted is make sure that nothing is pointing to it. So the first thing that we should do is say temp previous next is reset. We want to reset this. So let me get pen color there. Oh, that's not good. There we go. Temp previous. Temp previous. So we're now pointing at this node. Next. So now we're talking about this, and we're going to set that to null pointer. And there's kind of a trick to setting that to null pointer, and we just call a reset. So reset, kind of like that. Okay, reset parentheses. It calls a reset, and what it does is it makes this a null pointer. So this is no longer pointing to that. All right. Next thing we need to do is make this last so it's not pointing to that. So we say last, and remember to use the correct syntax. Last is equal to temp previous. Last is equal to temp previous. Okay, so now that's no longer looking at that. So that takes care of our last situation. Now all we need to do is write for our general case. Well, we had an if statement up here. After the for loops, we had the for loop bounce us down. Then we had an if statement that did this. It did this. Oh, and by the way, when we're done, we return. Okay. So we had an if statement that did this. Well, if I bounce down and I end my index, so let's go ahead and change this a little bit. If I end my index at, say, 3 instead of 4, my index is 3. Now my temp is pointing here. And this is my general case. I'm removing one in the middle, right? So I still have this pointer here. This isn't a null pointer anymore. So I've got this sitting here in the middle, and now I just need to remove this one. And so I'm just going to do an else here. I'm not going to play with anything. I'm just going to go ahead and do an else. And I'm going to say temp next previous is equal to temp previous. So temp next, whoops, I got that one arrow pointing the wrong way. Let's fix that. So I've got temp next, that's this, previous, that's this box, is now pointing at temp previous. So this is pointing here. And then I say temp previous next, which is this one. And I say that one, this is the one we replaced right there earlier. This one is now pointing to temp next. And as soon as temp goes out, as soon as we close this, or as soon as we return this, temp goes out of scope, and so it's no longer pointing at this, and this goes away. I don't have to deal with the next and previous inside here. It automatically takes care of itself. So that is how we do those two.